Robert Douglas is president of Planet Magpie IT Consulting and a 35-year technology veteran. Robert and his trusty pet lab founded, the name Magpie, by the way, have founded two IT consulting companies, the first focused on application development and the second on cloud services. Having started in the tech industry the same year that the first .com was registered, he's now operating his own data center and invented one of the very first clouds. Robert, welcome to the Economic War Room.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I'm happy to be here today.
Tell us about Planet Magpie, your customers, and what business you're in right now.
Planet Magpie has a very diverse service offering. We're basically an IT consulting firm. We do hosting. We have our own web team, 100% onshore. Our customers run the gamut from government, medical, biotech, and manufacturing. So we have seen everything, worked with everything, secured everything.
Well, we brought you in because you're on the front line, so to speak. You're one of the soldiers that's protecting government or individual companies or individuals. Are we in a true cyber war?
Yes, we are. The cyber war has been going on for quite some time now. Basically, there's lots of companies behind us that provide us with the weapons to combat the cyber war. But over the past year, we've had big losses for the United States, not just in monetary value, intellectual property. What else do we've had a 423% increase in hacks on financial firms.
Wow.
It's incredible what's going on.
Well, who's doing it?
Well, there's a number of things that occur here. There's nation states,
right?
China, Russia, of course, comes to mind for everybody.
Right.
But Germany, Israel, Iran are also involved. U.S., we are also a big hacker.
Yeah.
So we have our own farms. And what goes on is we hack them, they hack us, right? But the two, we are the most assaulted country in the world.
Yeah. Well, what are they after?
Well, there's a number of things they're after. There's intellectual property, ransom, which is paid in the form of Bitcoin. Basically, state and military secrets.
Right.
Blackmail, personal information, which is your credit cards, things like that, your address, your social security. And then some of them, it's just mischief. It's, we call them kiddie scripters. They go out, they find scripts, they run them just to see what they can do.
Yeah.
And it causes lots of damage for private companies.
Well, one that scares me is the wanton destruction.
Yes.
Where you got a nation state, will take down your power grid, we'll shut off your
Exactly.
water, or things like that. And those are real threats too.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That have to be addressed.
Yeah, so we're the primary victim, the number one victim, but who else in the world?
So the U.S. is the top, followed by UK, India, and Germany. That's the top four. Out of the top four...
all democracies.
All democracies, yeah. Figure that.
Yeah. So when somebody's attacking personally versus somebody's attacking a government or a water treatment plant or something, are they different in how they do the attacks?
They are different styles of attacks. So typically against a government, you're either after a denial of service, which is basically making it so they can't operate whatsoever. The U.S. has done that against Iran. The other thing we've done is malware infections that actually help us either ruin their network or gather information on things that they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's the typical for government-to-government attacks.
Yeah. So what are the most common methods for a cyber attack? You mentioned denial of service and so forth, but you're protecting companies too.
Exactly. Companies will also suffer denial of service, and we have a number of ways to combat that. The big thing for companies is phishing, right? So it's either phishing or spearfishing. Spearfishing, which is a very focused attack, and they're used interchangeable. Sometimes you use phishing to get the information you need to spearfish an individual.
Yeah, explain spearfishing. How does that operate?
Okay, so spearfishing, you would say, I work for you, you're my CFO. And somehow they've phished me and they figure out emails and whatnot. They've gotten into my contact list. Now they send me an info or an email from Kevin Freeman and say, Robert,
Yeah.
it's Kevin. I have this big deal going on. I need you to transfer this amount of cash to this account. And you give me the routing numbers and everything.
Yeah.
You would not believe how many companies fall for that.
For financial advisors, it is, hey, I'm your client. I've got $500,000 invested with you, but I got trapped in Europe, and that's why
Exactly.
there are rules that financial advisors are not allowed to respond to email requests.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've gotten that kickback.
Yeah. And so pick up the phone and immediately say, what do you mean I'm in Europe? And yet they've gotten hold of the email list.
Yep.
What about just getting credentials that way? Do they do that too?
They do, yeah. So phishing is basically, if you think about it, we all remember John Podesta and Hillary Clinton. That came about through a phish. He was sent an email that said, hey, there's been a compromise, you need to change your password. You have to enter your email address and your old password, then change it to the new password.
Oh.
Not really interested in your new password. And as soon as you type that in, they have it and they're in your account.
Oh, wow.
And that's very common.
Yeah, and it exposed a lot of things that
Yes.
that he probably didn't want
Didn't
to
want
expose.
people to know.
Right. So we're going to need to take a break, and when we come back, I want you to talk about, you shared with us earlier, the 7 attack vectors. So Robert, help us understand, what are the 7 attack vectors and how do your clients respond to them?
Yeah, so vectors are how we classify where attacks may occur on either the network or individual pieces of equipment. So where we start is the network itself, the hardware. And so that would be your switches, firewalls, Wi-Fi devices, things like that.
Now, are there differences between those? Are you high grade, low grade?
There are, yes. And typically we only recommend top-notch equipment. It's either Juniper, F5, Cisco, Extreme switching, but we never go with anything you can buy at, say, a Fry's or.
Yeah. One of the things that happened when I was working with the FBI and something, there were a bunch of Cisco routers that when you looked at them, they looked perfectly normal. But when you dug down into them, there were mistakes inside in the circuitry. I think they were Chinese origin. What happens if you've got a bad router from China?
They're in your network. They're collecting information. And that is one of our biggest concerns right now is all of our U.S. manufacturers, except for one, has their equipment manufactured in China. Now, the only one that I know of that completes their full builds, designs, and everything is F5 here in the U.S.
And is that what you tend to use with customers?
Typically we will use Juniper gear and Extreme gear on the inside of the network, but we use F5 to secure the perimeter.
Okay. So that's the first thing, is the network hardware.
That's the first thing, yes.
Next, you've got on the list workstations.
Workstations, yeah. So workstations, that's what we all use on a day-to-day basis, and there's lots of issues with workstations.
Like the laptop, like
laptops,
desktop?
yeah, desktops, even
Like
iPads, tablets, that type of thing. But our big issue there is that IT departments typically don't keep everything upgraded. So there has to be a regimen where every month everything's being updated. Firmware, software, and your Microsoft updates, your Mac updates, right? Without that, you're open to the world.
The problem is it's an annoyance
It
between
is.
the executive and then the IT department. What do you mean you're going to come in and update? And so,
Yep.
but it's absolutely essential. Is what
It's
you're telling me.
absolutely essential, but there's lots of ways that we've come up with to streamline that. Typically, we just tell people they need to leave their machines on 24 hours a day. Those updates occur without they're unattended.
Yeah.
So we push everything.
Yeah. What happens if you've got? I mean, I know Lenovo, when the IBM ThinkPad was welcome in the Pentagon, and then the Chinese bought it, and then it's no longer welcome in the Pentagon.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing is, the government, it's very tough to figure out where they're going with things like that. We've done work for some government agencies where we had to buy Dell equipment. It's assembled in the U.S. Everything was put together over in China or Korea, right? And it's just brought here and put together.
Yeah.
So it's U.S. made, but
But it could still have that vulnerability.
it could, yes.
Yeah. All right. So the third one you have listed is email.
Email, yeah. Email is one of the big contact points for hackers to come into your network. So typically it's through phishing, spearfishing, and what they're doing is they're sending you messages that you're either filtering or not filtering, and then all it takes is one employee to click one rogue message and the network starts being zipped up.
Yeah, I heard about this from those that are property tax assessor collectors. One employee clicked on a message, a birthday message,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be a photo, and the next thing you know, they've lost $80 million.
Exactly.
That they recovered some of it. And the question I was called in to ask, is this something they should be personally held liable for? And you're a tax assessor collector, you just lost $80 million. Well, maybe they should have segregated the computers that accept funds from the computers that the employees use for email.
Exactly, yeah. And so segregation on machines is also something that we make sure is done. So a lot of companies, they'll have an administrative account or my account that I log into my machine and I get my email, also has what we call local administrative privileges, which helps rogue applications spread themselves quicker. So we always do away with that.
So email, and you're able to protect in that area. But what about cloud services? That'd be the
Cloud
next one.
services, basically that's things like Office 365, software as a service, Google Mail, right? Things like that. So all that stuff, it's targeted for phishing, for your logins, right? They're put in your email. It always looks like a perfect email from Microsoft, and it says, put in your email address and password. You have to change it. There's been a security breach. Once they have it, they're not only attacking your company, they're attacking every company that's in your address book, because now you're a trusted source for the next email.
Yeah, it's just like getting the phone call from we're IT and Microsoft, and we've noticed that you're having all of these strange
Yes.
things. Only that's done. It's a lot more subtle. It doesn't have
Yeah.
the strange foreign accent on the other side.
Exactly, and that's the Microsoft support, and they have Apple support, and you'd be surprised how many people give up their credit cards. Not only do they give up their credit cards to them, they do log onto your machine and they start copying files.
Wow. All right, the next one you've got, number 5, is servers.
Servers, yeah. So servers are basically, that's where the guts of the network live, right? That's what we want to protect. It's the castle. So what we do is, servers, we do a process called hardening. Hardening means that that server can only do the functions it was meant to do. If it was, say, a file server, it doesn't have a web server on it. It doesn't have ports open to the outside world. It can only do file serving. And then that file serving is locked down by individuals. I'm in accounts receivable, I can only see accounts receivable files, right? So if we limit what people can do within the network and within the file structures, when there is an outbreak, we save ourselves from massive damage.
Yeah. Well, even when you leave the office, though, I've got something that's wired, mobile devices. How do you protect those?
So mobile devices, right? Companies do have a strange way of saving money sometimes, and they let their employees bring their own phones to work, which is we push back hard against. So companies that have employees that need phones, they should buy the phones for them. That way we can manage what's on the phones through what we call mobile device management. We can protect the phone. If something happens to it, we can scratch it, kill all the data on it, and protect company secrets.
Yeah. Well, the last, number 7, is the internet.
Internet, that's how everything comes to us, right? It could be your website, that could get hacked, your Wi-Fi, basically protecting your employees from themselves by streamlining what they can access. And so we come up with filtering so that they can't get to porn or gambling, things like that, because those sites tend to be infected.
They compromise.
Right,
Yeah.
and so they're compromised sites. They go to that site, a payload's put on their machine, we have ransomware.
Yeah. All right, we're going to need to take another break. When we come back, we're going to look to the future.
Okay, fantastic.
We've been talking with Robert Douglas of Planet Magpie, and he just went over the 7 attack vectors, the ways that criminals or cyber hackers can come in and take advantage of the fact that you're dependent on the internet, whether through mobile devices or desktops or laptops or whatever. Now we're going to talk about the future. We're going to talk about what can we do, how do we protect ourselves, and what's the future going to look like in this business. So, Robert, tell us some practical tips. What can an individual do that will help protect them at home?
At home, typically get a firewall. That's the best advice. Most homes run off of, say, a Spectrum modem or Comcast or whatever. It's not a true firewall. So purchase a firewall. For a home, you could get an off-the-shelf type of device. We wouldn't recommend that for a business.
Okay, and small business, what would you do? Where do you get
Small
that?
business, you have to go to real gear. So typically you'd get a Juniper firewall, be a smaller series, and you have a IT consulting firm set that up for you and make sure you're locked up and protected from the outside world.
Yeah, there's a cost associated with that, but I would imagine your answer to that is it's a lot less expensive than what happens if you get compromised.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And then for small businesses all the way up through mid-market, I know the big businesses are doing it, we always recommend cyber insurance. It's going to save you when it occurs, and it inevitably is going to occur with most companies.
Okay. So what do you look for when you're trying to find an IT consultant? What are the kind of things that a small business, large business, what should they be looking for?
So typically you should be looking for a company that is not just a desktop company, desktop support. So you're looking for an IT consulting firm. They have inside the company, they have engineers, they have desktop support guys, right? And you know that they can take care of you. You ask them to design a network for you or do a review of your existing network, and with the answers they come back with, you know whether or not you're in the right hands, right? If they come back with a bunch of stuff you could have bought off the shelf at the Fry's, local Fry's, you know you need to dump that company.
Yeah, you need somebody a little more sophisticated than that.
Exactly,
right?
because that whole setup is what's going to protect you down the road. And then they should put together a plan for you about how you maintain that equipment, how often do you do firmware updates, because you can't just put equipment in and leave it there, because the exploits keep occurring, right? And they find a way to get through firewalls. So, of course, Juniper and F5 and everybody are always updating their firmware.
Yeah.
So if
it's a constant war. It's one-upping.
It is a war, yeah.
So where's it all headed? Is this always going to be a race between good and evil?
It is. It's going to be. Network security is basically a permanent fixture in every company's line budget, and it's not going away. So what happens is we make changes, they make changes, and it's a constant tug of war between who's going to own the network.
From a societal standpoint, what can we do about this? Is it a government thing? Is it education? What do we need to do?
Well, there's lots of education that has to happen. I mean, the criminals that do this are opportunists. When the China virus occurred, you would not believe the ransomware that came in that preyed on people's need to have information about the virus. And people who normally would not have made their company susceptible to a hack did. We got lots of calls, lots of ugly restores during that period.
Well, people got sent home, right? You have to work from home,
yeah.
We're going to shut
they
down.
They were working from home, and so they were in areas that didn't have firewalls, right? And basically, for our customers, the only way they were able to connect to their networks was through a VPN, a hardware VPN, so that we could check their devices and make sure they're secure.
Yeah. Well, there should be some investment opportunities that come from this. I mean, investors, what kind of things should people look to invest?
I would look at companies that actually are manufacturing already in the U.S., like F5. F5 has some very exciting new components to their security systems that deal with bots. They've been around forever, but they're starting to really aggravate firms like JetBlue and Bank of America. And what a bot does is it allows a person to access you, your equipment, your web servers, right? And the bot is the penetrator. And so it gets in, and then it starts, say, if you're JetBlue, it starts booking all the flights, right? And taking all the seats.
Yeah.
And then they aggregate those and sell them off to booking.com, right? Things happen like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've described this as an arms race or a continual one-up war. Arms dealers generally make a lot of money,
Yes.
And so if there are companies like that, then that would be an investment.
Yeah.
On the other side of investors, we deal a lot with financial advisors.
Right.
And our financial advisors are trying to help their clients invest patriotically, help to benefit their customers and benefit America at the same time. But they're under enormous scrutiny from the state securities agencies or the SEC to make sure they maintain the highest level of cybersecurity. Do you deal with financial advisors?
We do, yes. And over the past 5 years, it's gotten really restricted for financial advisors. What we have to, actually certify them to whoever's holding the brokerage firm is incredible now.
Yeah.
And so they used to, owners say, oh, we don't need a firewall. Now, the new financial regulations have helped us secure companies.
And that's helpful. That's good.
Yes.
All right. So we know the risks, the risk of a digitized society. I remember when I got my first compact computer with two floppy drives, 64K floppy drives that you'd stick in. Actually, that was a K-Pro computer. That's how old it was. And then I got a compact, and I got this thing called a hard disk.
Oh, yeah.
It had 100 megabyte, right?
You're cooking with fire.
Yeah, I was big time. But I got scared, silly, hearing about how somebody could hack in and wipe out all my data. That was nothing compared to how much we're connected now.
Yep.
So the risks are real.
They are.
But the advantages, the benefits of having this technology are real too. Tell us about the benefits of
The benefits are incredible, right? So the free flow of information that we've come into in this new age has helped science, medicine, right? And it's just, and of course business. We can conduct business 24 hours a day across the globe, right? And so I look at it kind of as the internet has been the second age of enlightenment. Right, and so here we are. We've got everything at our fingertips, and we've been able to work in ways we couldn't years ago. Right, which has been fantastic. There is a big push by the big tech now that kind of is censoring the populace, right, which has started to become a drawback. But I'm concerned that where we're moving to with that is that we're more of a model of the CCP with our censorship through
the Chinese Communist Party
property.
is moving that out using technology.
Yes.
So what we've got really is a blessing
It is.
And
but
a possible curse.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing about America is we're free market, right? And so there are new companies, they're coming up, and they will challenge the big tech.
All right, well, thank you, Robert, so much. Hey, we need expertise like Robert's to deal with this ongoing threat. You should get educated. Download the free economic battle plan at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman with the Economic War Room.